Let's head to the US, where leading Senate Republicans are preparing to launch a coordinated and wide-ranging investigation into Russia's alleged meddling in the US election. It comes after the American intelligence analysts confirmed that Moscow intervened in the election to help President-elect Donald Trump win the White House. One intelligence official said there was indications as early as October that the Russians had shifted their focus to harm Hillary Clinton. But Donald Trump has rejected the findings, putting him in direct conflict with the same national security agency, which he'll have to rely on for intelligence once he takes office in January.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's just another excuse. I don't believe it. I don't know why. And I think it's just, they talked about all sorts of things. Every week it's another excuse. We had a massive landslide victory, as you know, in the Electoral College.
Well, that is President-elect Donald Trump speaking there on Fox News. Joseph Fitsanakis is a leading expert on national security as well as international espionage. He's an assistant professor of political science in the Intelligence and National Security Studies program at Coastal Carolina University. He joins me now. Good day to you, Joseph Fitsanakis.
Good to be here. Thank you.
What is the evidence, as far as we know, of Russia's involvement in the US election?
There's no public evidence of this, at least at this moment. I would actually suggest that any claims made by anonymous U.S. officials in the U.S. press should be taken with a healthy degree of skepticism. That is not to say that this didn't happen. What has been described in the press sounds like a classic case of covert operation, basically an action designed to influence any kind of political, economic or military affairs abroad. This is sort of a standard operating procedure for intelligence agencies.
Is this claim that has been made over the weekend necessarily anything new? I noticed reading through a lot of the copious amounts of newspaper copy written about this, that there was very little new substance, at least as far as I could tell, to this claim, because we knew all along that the Podesta emails had been leaked, that there was suspicion this had come through Russian espionage channels and eventually found its way to WikiLeaks.
No, there's nothing new in the allegations that surfaced in the last couple of days. The practice of interfering in foreign elections with an intent to influence them goes back to the days before the Cold War. I mean, if the Russians had not actually tried to influence the result of the elections, that would have been strange. But what is new, what is, I would say, unusual and perhaps even unprecedented, is the sort of public dispute between the president-elect and what appears to be the CIA, or at least elements within the United States intelligence community. We've never seen that before.
As you understand it, was the strategy taken by Russia during this election campaign about getting Donald Trump into the White House, or was the focus on harming Hillary Clinton?
The actual strategic goal of this was primarily to bring disrepute to the process itself. I don't think the Russians believe that if Trump was elected, he would suddenly become the best friend of Russia. I mean, those things don't get resolved so quickly and easily. I think the main purpose was to damage the reputation of the system. For the reasons were twofold. I think one is sort of an international audience trying to show America as sort of imperfect to the world, but also to show to domestic audiences in Russia that any kind of attempt to bring Western-type reforms should not be pursued, because you see the state of Western democracy. And in that respect, the leak that just came out recently helps achieve that goal, which is to erode the sense of trust, such as it is, between the U.S. government and the civil society in the country.
So how concerning is it, therefore, that Donald Trump flat out rejects the findings of the intelligence agencies? As you say, it's an anonymous source, should be treated with a degree of skepticism, etc. But what does it mean that there is this clear breach between the president-elect and the CIA, given the importance of that relationship generally?
The relationship between the intelligence community and the president is never sort of very happy. It's always tense and full of stress because it's a difficult business. But the public dispute is something that we're not used to, especially fought over things like Twitter, for instance. I will remind you that Trump has also said that he does not request any intelligence briefings, which he's entitled to get. I think in his interview today, he said he doesn't require them because he's a very smart person, which again is sort of an unusual take on intelligence. I think it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the role of intelligence in U.S. foreign policy. We take it for granted that somebody who is the president of the United States is smart. The question is, can he use intelligence given to him by very capable and typically individuals who have a lot of expertise to make sense of the world as he makes policy decisions? The fact is, of course, the president does not have to take the word of the CIA or, in fact, any intelligence agencies. And the reality is that most presidents don't. They do not typically take on the advice of the intelligence agencies. But to see that happen so publicly, again, is something that we're just not very used to at all in the United States.
If we accept it to be true, does the Russian involvement in this election campaign mark a significant step up in the way that foreign governments can influence things? I know that there was evidence of Chinese access to Obama campaign documents and communications in the lead up to his election, some of previous elections as well.
I don't think it marks necessarily a step up. I mean, compare that to cases in the Cold War, which included far more aggressive methods of doing this, including things like bribing and even blackmail of officials by both the United States and the Soviet Union. So this is like small stuff compared to what we've seen in the past. But what it does show is the level of sectarianism that is prevalent in U.S. politics, to the point now where the sectarianism inside the United States between the two parties and sometimes within the two parties actually allows a foreign power to bring disrepute to the very sort of sense of trust that characterizes American political institutions.
What's your bet in terms of the German and French elections? Because I see a lot of chatter about the potential for Russian influence and the desire for Russia to influence the outcomes there. Are we going to see more of the same, do you think?
Again, the opposite would actually be strange, especially in our networked world today. It is so easy to breach security systems compared to 20, 30 years ago. And if Russia realizes that it becomes increasingly easy to create chaos and increase mistrust between the civil society and the government in Western countries, it will continue to do so. These are very fragile times for democracy, not just in America, but in the West in general. And I'm sure that people in the Kremlin are taking note of this.
And is that, in your view, the broader strategic aim of the Kremlin here, to undermine the relationship between elected politicians in democracies and the public?
It would make sense if that were the case. I mean, it's impossible at this point to prove if efforts by Russia or whoever else actually had an effect on getting President-elect Trump elected. But what is apparent is that this further undermines the trust between the electorate and the process of democracy. And in the context that this is happening, with events in Europe, in the European Union, the apparent crumbling of long-standing European and Western institutions, including, I have to say, NATO, this becomes increasingly dangerous and unpredictable.
Joseph Fitsanakis, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joseph Fitsanakis is a leading expert in national security and espionage. He's an assistant professor of political science in the Intelligence and National Security Studies program at Coastal Carolina University in the US. It's 26 minutes past 6.